Of the days. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you to everyone watching out there that has been doing that as well. So I'm going to do it just like we've done before. I'm going to introduce you, and then she will tell you a little bit about herself, and then launch into her presentation. So this is Dr. Gretchen Mullin-Sawicki, and she is from Pittsburgh, and she will start her presentation now.
Okay, I'll take it over from there. First of all, it's so good to finally be here. It's been kind of a long interview process, so I'm thrilled to finally be able to come to your campus, to see your buildings, and to meet everyone. So I thank you for that. Gretchen Mullin-Sawicki, it's not an easy last name to say, but Sawicki, a nice Polish name. I have been working at the Community College of Allegheny County in Pittsburgh for about 16 years. So I've worked a long time at the community college. So I love community colleges. It's part of my philosophy, it's part of who I am, it's part of my beliefs. The fact that education needs to be accessible, it needs to be open, we need to be welcoming, we need to retain our students, and we need to give students the best possible education that they can have. I was born in Pittsburgh, but I was actually raised in Ontario, Toronto, Ontario, and London, Ontario. So I went to the University of Toronto. I have my doctorate from the University of Toronto in English literature. So that's my background. I also lived in Tokyo. I lived in Tokyo, yes, for 4.5 years. So at one point I was fluent in Japanese. I cannot say I'm fluent any longer, but I have experience there. And then I also lived in New York for a while. I was there for September 11th. Very tragic and horrible time, but I got a lot of experience working as a program director at the Woodhull Institute for Ethical Leadership. So I did that. And then I moved to Pittsburgh. I guess, do you guys need to know anything else about me? I thought I would just kind of break right into my presentation now. So today I'm excited to talk about the SUNY ERIE student life cycle and how it applies to the CARES model. The CARES model, of course, is compassion, accountability, relevance culturally, excellence in education, and all the things that we do, and pivotally students first. Absolutely students first. So if you look, of course, at the word CARES, CARES is perfectly what we need to do. It's about caring for our students. It's about engaging our students. It's about knowing our students. And it's about being there for our students. And it's about creating programs that are culturally relevant and give jobs, wonderful family-sustaining jobs to our students. So CARES is really a nice way to talk about the model, and I'm really excited that you actually have this program related to CARES. But what you need to do before I can actually break into, I'm going to be talking about 4 areas on the life cycle for students, this kind of continuum. The first is going to be the future student, the student who hasn't actually registered yet, but has maybe gone to the website or maybe came to an open house that has an inkling and an interest in coming to SUNY ERIE, but they haven't registered yet. So I'm actually going to call that a step 1 on the continuum. No, they haven't registered, but they're very interested in registering. Number 2 on the cycle, I'm going to talk about that brand new student, that student that just registered, the student who is totally brand new, had never gone to a community college or a college before, so that's going to be the second group of students that I'm going to talk about. The third is the returning student. The student that maybe went from the fall to the spring semester, or maybe they dropped out and they haven't come here for a while. They stopped out, they're coming back, but it's the third group is the returning student. And the fourth group on this continuum that I'm going to talk about is the graduating student. I mean, we all want that student to graduate, so that's going to be the fourth area that I'm going to be talking about. And along with the graduating student, I'm going to link that in with the alumni. Okay, so those are the 4 areas that I'm going to talk about today. But the first thing we need to do in order to prepare and to talk about the student life cycle is who are our students? Our students are totally different than the students from even 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or 1 year ago. We have a very, very different student population than we did before. So I want to start off by asking you 3 questions, and then I want to give you some statistics. Okay. Who is the largest minority in the States? Who? What group is the largest minority in the States? These are folks that are in your classrooms. Anyone? What? Hispanic. Guess what? People with disabilities. People with disabilities. Okay, that's the largest minority. Second question. How many generations of students are in the classroom now? How many generations of students? 3? Nope. Nope. 5. 5 generations of students are sitting in your classrooms. So think of how we have to apply this CARES model to all these different ages of students. That's like a big thing to consider. Okay, and the third question, I think you already got this one. Who is the fastest growing ethnic minority? Someone said it before. Yes, Hispanic and Latino students. So that is the fastest growing ethnic minority. So these are the things that we need to keep in mind for when we're applying our CARES model. Okay, but let me also read you some more statistics, and this is from the National Center for Education Statistics. In 2020, 15 to 18% of LGBTQAI students will self-identify. By 2020, 60% of new college entrants will be persons of color. By 2020, we will have an 11% increase in the number of veterans coming to our campuses. This is 2 years from now. By 2020, 1 in 4 students will have diagnosable illnesses, things like anxiety, things like being on the spectrum, the autism spectrum. You're probably seeing this already in your classrooms. You'll have more students in your classrooms. By 2020, 40% of our students will be non-traditional. Non-traditional doesn't mean an age difference anymore. Non-traditional are working students, they're part-time students, they're students that are single parents. It's a much broader concept now, the non-traditional student. And the last piece of statistics I want to share is that by 2020, there will be a large increase in our third age learners. Those are people that are 55 to 79 years old. So, when we're talking about the CARES model, we're talking about looking at all these different variations of students that are in your classrooms, that are on our campuses, that are in our offices. We're not just talking about someone just walking in, just a young, we have all this variance, all this beautiful diversity, but we have to keep that in mind. We absolutely have to keep in mind that when we're doing our planning, our retention, our enrollment, and when I'm talking about the SUNY ERIE student life cycle. So, let me flip this. Okay, so how do we get that future student? How do we get that future student? We have to create the most amazing SUNY ERIE story. It's all about the story. Who are we? And I have hashtag CARES, because I think a CARES model is a perfect model to talk about what we do, what creates our story here. Compassion, that we're gonna be compassionate, we're gonna care about our students. And how do we do that for the future students? Well, we go out and we connect in our community. We're out in our community with our students. We're doing civic engagement projects with our students out in the community. We are showing who we are with compassion. Compassion is kindness, and it's understanding. It's making the student first. That's absolutely necessary. Accountability. When I think about accountability, I think of us being stewards of resources. That we have a really good return on investment of what we provide our students. That they know that when they register, those credits that they're paying for are absolutely valuable because it's going to give them a wonderful family-sustaining income. So we make that as part of our story to those future students. We talk about what wonderful careers we have, and we share that in all sorts of different mediums. And I talk a lot about, it might be the next slide, let me see. Maybe not. Social media is absolutely necessary in creating our story. I blog. I was blogging weekly before because I learned that a school, they changed all their marketing to social media. Like they weren't doing kind of traditional marketing, but they were doing e-books and blogging and everything that you can think about for social media. And they increased their enrollment 30%. Now we've talked about the different types of students there are, so that social media doesn't work for everybody, but it certainly works for a lot of younger students, the Generation Z students. I don't know if you know this, but Generation Z students, they don't contact admissions offices anymore. 75% of them go straight to a campus without even having contacted admissions. And why do they do that? Because they look at our YouTube channel. The YouTube channel is actually the #1 social media platform that young students are looking at and they're using to make college decisions. So what does our YouTube channel say? It's got to share the CARES model. It's got to talk about how compassionate we are, how we're accountable and stewards with our resources, that we know about cultural relevancy, and that we make our programs really relevant to them, because they need that cultural relevancy in many ways. Cultural relevancy is about integrating diversity and inclusion into our programs, onto our campuses, but it's also creating that student that's culturally relevant. We need to create these global citizens too. So that's some of the story that we would talk to about in our SUNY ERIE story, and that we would put out there. We would create our story through social media. Excellence. We show our excellence of our programs. We blog about them. We do ebooks about them. We have press about them. We celebrate them. We celebrate our faculty and the achievements that they have been making. Not just through simple little things, but make it a celebration. Share the story about all the things that we're doing here. And that's how you get enrollment. And that's how you retain faculty and students too. Although I'm talking about the future students here. But that's how you get the future students to come to your campuses, is by creating these stories of excellence, of students first, okay? We also have to think about our facilities too, when we're creating our story. Do we have international flags? Do people see international flags waving around, welcoming everyone here? We're really close to Canada. We have Canadian flags flying around. We have to think about these things. Just this year, we put a whole slew of international flags at all of our campuses, and students came up to us and thanked us. And we don't have tons of international students, but they noticed it. Because remember, we're welcoming all students, international students too. Do we have signage in different language? That's something to consider too. I mean, we have Hispanic students, the growing number of students that are coming to our campuses. How do we make sure that our facilities are also welcoming? And this is what we show in our slides, in our story, in our voice, in our presentation of who we are, of what SUNY ERIE is. And I really like the idea of the CARES model in doing this. Like, really promote it. It doesn't just have to be a one-year thing, but CARES can be your story. It's wonderful. Okay, so we get the brand new student. They've come to our site. We got them registered. So what do we do using our CARES model to make sure we retain that student and we get them through to retention? Well, what my argument is we should assign them with a CARES navigator. Okay, what is that? What's a CARES navigator? It's one single point of contact, one person that they can go to ask any question, big or small. We have done this at my campus very successfully. Students will just actually, the students don't have to contact that SPOC or that CARES navigator. The CARES navigator calls them. They text them. They send them emails. They meet them at picnics. They do whatever they can to make that connection. Because if you make that connection, you're engaging the student. You have to engage the student. You don't engage the student and they're like, oh, I gotta go here, I gotta go there, I gotta do this, I gotta do. The student is frustrated, they're annoyed, they feel like their time is not valued. Give them one person. They can go to one person. That person will answer questions for them. We've done that well, and I think it would be really cool to call them a CARES navigator, because that's the model. So that's the first thing that I would do. Second thing for that new student, we have to get them on a pathway. We have to get them on a pathway. That's for the student that is in developmental education. We have to look at our developmental education and decide if it is working. It's probably not, because it's not working anywhere else. So there are things that you can do. We've done something very successful, multiple measures. We accept, the faculty got together and they agreed that if a student had a certain grade point average, I think it's 2.8, then they would be exempt from developmental education from English and reading. The math faculty did not feel comfortable with that, so we didn't do that yet. They're still working on it together to see that, if they can come up with a good grade point average. But the research has shown that the high school's grade point average is a better indicator of success. Most people know that. So we have to start getting students on pathways by eliminating these obstacles from them. And we know that if a student gets into a developmental class, they usually do not graduate. They're in math, they're in reading, they've got all these different levels, they can't get through and they don't graduate. That is not the CARES model. So we have to come together and we have to figure out what is our CARES model for developmental education and then put that student on a pathway. There's been a big movement about pathways. You've got the academic paths, just about the classes. Then other people talk about pathways as all the students' services. So if you haven't started on that journey, that's something that has to happen because you want to give students less choice. I know that doesn't sound good, but you want to put them on a path. And I always have the metaphor, if I go in and have a buffet, if I go in and there's all this food there, I'll either gorge and eat too much, i.e. take too many credits, right? Or I don't appreciate it, or I just overwhelm, there's too much food, and I actually hate buffets because of that. Because I always feel like I gotta get my money's worth, I eat too much and I'm sick. So we want to make sure that the students are eating the right amount of food on their pathway. Maybe a strange metaphor, but it works for me. So we have to create those pathways for students. And a lot of the pathways also relate to career discovery. Some students, they don't know what they want to take. We have to try to help them figure out what to take. We have to talk to them about the programs and the job opportunities here in Buffalo. You have to do that. You've got to give them that information up front. I don't think that you should give them that information at the end because maybe they took the wrong courses for that. So I really think we have to somehow tie in career services right in the beginning when a student comes in so that they can think, okay, I really want to go into data analytics. These are the sciences or the maths I need to take. Oh, I really want to go into physical therapy. These are the courses that the four-year schools will transfer. So we have to give them that information really up front as close as we can, and then hopefully get them on the correct path. So all these things are important for the brand new student. But another really important thing in the CARES model with the brand new student is social engagement. I've seen so many students and faculty tell me that students are lonely. Faculty told me they have never seen such a group of lonely students. They're used to getting on their little computers, and I like on my little computer too, but I have ability to network and to talk to people. Some of these students don't have the skill. They don't have it. The older students usually do have a better skill with this, but for those younger students too, we have to try to mitigate their loneliness. I know that may sound like, oh my God, we're just supposed to teach them. Why do we have to mitigate their loneliness? They will not stay in your classes if they feel lonely, they don't feel connected, they don't feel engaged. So there are some simple things that you can do to mitigate loneliness. We do something called a lunch bunch, where we have this big table, and out in our cafeteria it says reserved on it. We have student ambassadors there. I stop down sometimes, the deans, other students, and they sit there, and then they invite students that are eating by themselves to join them. And students have really been, really liked that. It's worked really well to actually, it seems kind of silly, but it makes people feel welcome. And that's what CARES is about. It's about creating an inclusive environment. Inclusion is welcoming, and that's what you need to do. You need to welcome students and make them feel that they're part of your team, that they're part of SUNY ERIE. Some other things you can do. We have, of course, student clubs. And you don't have administrators sitting outside of the student clubs. You have students inviting other students to join in on the clubs. They're interested in students. Students want to learn and hear from other students. And you have it out in the open. Or the other thing that we've done very successfully is we have students in hallways. We do advising in the hallways. We have pop-up events in the hallways. So students have to learn about things. We don't want students to have to go into offices to learn. We want students to learn from just being out there. So you have to make yourself really, really accessible to students to make it all about students first, which is the CARES model. We do picnics. I have students involved in tons of different committees for me so that they can say to me, well, this is what a student would like. I make students very much a part of my team. They're on facilities committees, they're on strategic enrollment management committees, they're on digital signage committees, and they know usually the answer. Like I'll say, I'm thinking about putting a sign, a big digital sign to tell students about clubs and activities in the student lounge. That seems like it would make sense, right? The student said, why would you do that, Dr. Mullin-Sawicki? Everyone sleeps in there. So, like stuff like that. It's like, oh, thank you so much. I would have made a huge mistake. So he said, put it over here, put it on this bulwark, this area over here. And so really listen to your students. Students have to be part of the voice of your campuses and your college because they're so, so helpful. And we have to, for that absolutely new student, we have to give them all sorts of different connections to make them stay. I've been talking about social clubs, but it's also the academic things that we have to do. They have to know about the tutoring. Do you have online tutoring? Do you have hybrid tutoring? Tell them it's free tutoring if you have it. Ours is all free. All these different services that we have for students, they have to know about it right away as a new student. So you have to find ways to bring that to them. Our tutors, we have students as success coaches. The faculty allow them to go into the classes very quickly. They're not taking up a lot of faculty time, don't worry about that. But they go into the class and say, hey, I'm Molly, I'm here, I'm on the second floor. I can help you with your tutoring, it's absolutely free. I can also help with time management. It's really nice to meet you. That's all you need. So we have them actually going into classrooms. You have to get into the classroom so that they know about these services. And I think that's something that's very, very helpful for our students to know about. I have a couple other things listed here. I know that you may have an early warning system. That's with someone shaking their head, so that faculty will say, hey, the student needs support. You use all those systems right up. You use it with all students, but of course with the very first registered student. The students probably within the first, I think I read a statistic, within the first 6 weeks, they know whether or not they're going to drop out. So we need to do a lot of interventions in those first 6 weeks. And our single point of contact, our CARES navigators, do a lot of connections with those students in the first 6 weeks. How you doing? They'll send them a text, they'll send them an email. Do you want to meet? This is where I'm available. And these students are online students too. So when I'm talking about students, I'm also talking about online students, on-site students, hybrid students. We have to come and bring our services to where the students are at. Okay? So the texts, the emails, the phone calls, to help them, to connect them so they know about the services. This is all absolutely so, so, so important with the CARES model. Okay, so the next group are the returning students. Some students, as we know, they stop out. We need to know why they are stopping out. What is happening to our students that they're leaving our campuses? What is happening? And we have applied something very, very different this year that could potentially work well here as well. We're looking at the whole student. We're not just looking at their ability to learn in the classroom. We're looking at why they're stopping out. I have a quick story. There was a student, she stole a sandwich. The security were called, and the campus president said, "Why are you stealing the sandwich?" "I'm hungry." Do you think we're going to give that person a fine? No, we're not going to give them a fine. We're going to try to figure out and do something about hunger. You may not know about this. I mean, you've probably been reading about this, hopefully, but our students can be hungry students. They're hungry, they cannot learn. So we've been bringing services onto the campus. It has not cost anything because we have agencies that donate us food. We just had to find a space for it and maybe build some shelves. And then we've used student ambassadors to help give out the food. So it wasn't a staffing issue either. They did training, they learned how to deal with things, and then they helped to staff the space. So you have to think about why they're not returning, and you have to deal with this by attending to the whole student. The other thing we've been doing is we've been working really well with our social service agents, and they actually come to our campuses on site 1 day a week now. We give them free space, And they work with our counselors. They help students with unhealthy relationship issues, sexual abuse. We're seeing all of this stuff in our classrooms. So we have to actually think about things that we can do to help our students stay. So sometimes it's learning. Sometimes there are problems related to learning. Other times there are other issues. Another thing that maybe your foundation could do, or maybe they have already, is we created something called a GAP scholarship. A GAP scholarship is if someone has a sudden emergency. So let's say they're driving their car, they're going to campus, the battery dies. Oh my God, I can't come to school anymore. Well, we have a little fund. They can only access it so many times to buy a battery for the car. Get them back in your class. Find out what the problem is. And this has been very helpful. And our board is actually trying to increase the amount in this scholarship so that we can retain our students and we can get them graduated. Because that's what the success story is, getting students graduated into really good jobs or four-year degrees. The other thing I'd like to do for the returning student using our CARES model is I like to give them opportunities. Well, I'll go to A, the general education soft skills. We need to make sure that our students are graduating with communication skills, dependability skills, critical thinking skills, analytical skills, all these skills. Industry is saying to us, we can't find anyone. We don't want to hire anyone. They can't talk. They don't dress properly. They don't come to work on time. We should start addressing that in our classrooms, integrating that into our general education, doing something with that. We've had some success, especially with our automotive students. We have some of our faculty that are starting to do this and integrating them into the courses, and it's working. The other thing that I do is I have work-study students. I have a very large contingency of work-study students, and this is one of the things that I do with them. I make sure that I'm developing their soft skills. So I have them do a self-assessment of their soft skills, leadership, critical thinking, all the dependability, and then I review them at the midpoint time, and I give them tons of opportunities to show me and to practice their communication and practice their leadership. And then I do a final assessment as well. So you're always wanting to make sure you use assessment and data collection in your helping of the students develop their soft skills. So you want to make sure you're doing this to the returning student because you want them to go out, get a good job, and the industry is saying, wow, SUNY ERIE is amazing. They've got such great students. They're like doing great things there. That CARES model is really working. That's what we want them to say. The other thing that I think is very, very important for our students is applied learning. Applied learning. I would hope that many of your programs have capstone opportunities, so the students are getting all this theory, they're getting theory, they're getting theory. They need to apply their learning in a workplace. We have done something a little bit different at my campus. We have something called an innovation lab. And the Innovation Lab is a space where I have cybersecurity, data analytics, multimedia programming, gaming, and simulation. I have those three programs primarily functioning in there. And then we developed a program where industry becomes members of our Innovation Lab. And what does that entail? Their membership allows them to connect with faculty and students on project-based learning. So they love it because they have a little project, they need someone to help, they don't have the staff. And they bring it to our faculty and our students, and our faculty and our students work on it for free for them. And they're getting all this experience to put in their portfolios to say that they, worked on a project, and the industry is saying, thank you so much, we're getting this work done for free. So that is basically applied learning. You can have students go out and do internships, or you can bring industry in and help on projects right inside the classroom. So that is something else that I think is really, really valuable for the returning student. And of course, we have checkpoints and technology. You're going to have lots of transfer days and joint admissions and internships and all these different things to keep the student engaged, keep them here on campus as much as you can. I think I have a slide related to data. We need to make sure that all these interventions that we're doing are working. So I'm calling it data cares for interventions and strategic programs. You don't want to just do these things and then you're putting in all these resources, your time, and you don't know if they're working. Perfect example, we thought we were doing something really great with supplemental instruction for math. We tacked on an extra credit. The students didn't have to pay for it, but the faculty, we paid them an extra credit so they could work with students and practice their math. And we thought this was fabulous until we saw the data that students who weren't doing this supplemental instruction were doing better. I mean, it was devastating. It was shocking for us. But we stopped. We stopped doing it because it wasn't working. So you have to use that data in your decisions. You have to, get a couple years worth, but it was like, oh, our students that are not taking supplemental instruction are actually doing better than those that are taking supplemental instruction. So you have to try strategies, but you have to believe in your data, and then you have to make alterations. You have to change things because you want to make improvements. You want to put your resources, we talk about being stewards of our resources, accountability, right? So we have to be accountable, and we have to use data to help us with that. Am I good with time?
Yep, you're at 32 minutes.
Oh, okay, good. All right, yay, I'm on the graduating students. Okay, we need to celebrate. I'm sure that you have a really great graduation, but we need to make sure that everybody's at that graduating. That is the pinnacle of success. The graduating student, they graduated. So we need to celebrate them. We need to celebrate ourselves that we got them through it. It needs to be a big party, a big celebration. But it also, those students that become alumni, they are actually your CARES ambassadors. They have learned compassion, accountability, relevance with cultures, excellence, and students first. So those students that are graduating, we have to stay connected to them. We have to stay connected. They're potential donors. They're your potential donors for the future. They're your potential faculty, potentially. They are your potential sites for internships and apprentices. They're your potential mentors for students. They're your potential advisory board members. These students, you don't just say, okay, bye, thank you, good job, yay, you did it. You must stay connected to them. You have to stay connected to them because they're your CARES ambassadors. That's really, really important. And I've already said this, but you have to assess. You need to assess that everything is working with your accountability, with excellence, our students learning. Our students learning, you have to assess that because that's what we're all about. Are you teaching them culture appropriately and are programs appropriate culturally? Is there relevance there? Are the programs relevant? Do they want to come to these programs because they're relevant? We need to know these things. We need to know the answers to these questions. And not just a one-shot deal, but you need to really continue to do this. You need to assess always, continually. And we know that Middle States requires that too. Our students first. There really has to be, that's what it's about. That's what CARES is about. CARES is about not just the last S with the students first, but all of that is students first. All of it is absolutely students first. And if you use your CARES model in your decision making, in the programs that you develop, in everything that you do, you will retain your students. And they will get good jobs, and they will love the institution because how much you've helped them, and then they will hopefully become these donors and all these other people providing scholarships and all the things that we want to help our new students. So I think that's it. Yeah. Any questions?
I know you guys have questions.
A quiet group. Yes, yes. Yay.
CARES navigators.
Who are my CARES?
CARES navigators.
CARES navigators, that is like the single point. That is like one person that helps the student navigate the system.
Where are they?
Well, in my institution, they're administrators. They're administrators. They're like Perkins staff. They are I have some directors that do it. I have student life. And usually we'll do it like, we'll connect the students in the right areas. So if they're veterans, they'll connect with the veterans. So they'll be their CARES navigator. If there's supportive services, they'll connect with supportive services because they'll connect with the groups that they already should be connecting with. That's how we organize it. That's something that would have to be negotiated and talked about. But it works for us. It works very well because it helps. We had a big, 8% increase in retention, and it's been increasing since then. 8%? 8, yes.
Well, to law school first.
Whoever wants to go.
Nice presentation.
Oh, thank you.
Why do you want to come to SUNY ERIE?
Well, there's a couple things. First of all, this would be a promotion for me. I'm a campus president, so being a provost is a promotion. So that's, everyone wants to, grow in their careers. So that's one big thing. The second thing is that I like some of the services that you provide for students. I love that, that the transportation, I like the childcare. You have that new residence. So you're doing some things that are really good and really wise for students. So, and the third thing is that I have family that lives in Toronto, and Buffalo has always been the point, like the midpoint that we meet at. And we go to a Sabres game, we always go to a game, and I'm a Sabres fan when I'm there, for sure. And then we also go to like some theater, I think it's called The Road Less Traveled. So I like Buffalo. And so I was just, it was a point in my career that I was kind of looking around and this opportunity came up. So it was really those three things. Sure. Yes.
I was going to piggyback on Joan's question about the Care Navigator. How about on the other side of it, when students want to leave and they are leaving? What do you do anything for them in terms of cares? Try to work with them? Leave? Yeah, to maybe get them back later on.
Well, what we're doing is we're finding out why they want to leave. We never did that before. We just kind of they just left. So at least we're capturing why they want to leave. Sometimes we can't retain them. Sometimes they can't. But if there are things like financial problems, maybe there's a gap scholarship. Maybe we can get them a work-study assignment. Maybe there's something we can do with an internship, an earn and learn program. So we do those things. It's hard. It's hard when they leave and they just kind of disappear and you don't find out. So that's why we try to get our faculty. Our faculty are the closest to those students. They're in the classroom with those students. So our care navigators are doing some of that outreach to them to find out. They have done some of that. They've made some calls, but we haven't done a lot of that, right? We're trying to retain them more than finding out why they're leaving. But that's a good point. Yes.
You said you have you said you have an innovation lab. You said it was run by administrators?
Yeah, our innovation lab is something that it's actually a very cool space. It was a childcare center. We couldn't afford our childcare centers anymore. So we created this big interdisciplinary space with augmented reality, virtual reality, apples, and PCs, and it's not run, it's faculty.
Is it a physical room?
It's a physical room. So it's a physical room where students take classes, but we also set that room up so that it could be a space where industry could come in. There's like cool chairs, and they can talk and talk about their needs, and it's a very, very different type of classroom. It's not the standard classroom. It's very techy, and very kind of interdisciplinary. You can turn it into one room or two rooms. You can split the rooms up. But it's run by, I kind of manage it. I manage I call them our clients. Our clients come in, and then I field those out to the appropriate faculty who are interested in those projects for their students. So it's not the faculty that are just taking on extra work. We don't want that. We want the faculty to work with the students on project-based learning. That's what it's all about, project-based learning. And they're micro projects. We tell them they have to be small projects. So instead of you coming up with a project, the industry, and you negotiate that project, and then the students can present the project to them. It's been really actually very good. We did a lot of things with marketing this summer. We had projects where a borough came in and they said that they needed to highlight an event that was going on. Our students created the signs. They turned into lawn signs and websites, and it was actually implemented. So and then you know how amazing that looks on a portfolio for the student? It's great for the student. Sure. Yes.
So SUNY ERIE has 3 very diverse campuses.
Yes.
And so can you comment on any experience or any plans that you have with being visibly engaged at each of the different campuses?
Well, I would have to be at each of the different campuses, obviously, for people to know me, engage. We could also potentially work on a project together. I think that's how you get to know people. If you work on a project, you have to physically be there. You have to build those relationships anywhere. I work at a campus, and I know our provost goes around as much as he can, but if you don't go to the sites, if you don't go to these different campuses, people will feel alienated. They will. They'll think, oh, you're just focused on North Campus. So it's relationship building, it's projects, and finding out some things that you can do, and having like kind of small wins together. So it's just basically about building those relationships by physically being there and spending the time. Yes?
Okay.
Oh, I could probably hear you.
Let me see if well, yeah, but it's for the
Oh, they
streaming,
can't
yeah.
hear, okay.
Oh, okay, so of course I agree with you that the reason that most people come to college, particularly community colleges, is for jobs. However, something like half of our students are in programs where they are intending to transfer to a four-year school in something else, frequently liberal arts or something else. I wonder if you could comment a little bit. I mean, one of the things, the public and the political discourse about community colleges has tended to stereotype them as being strictly about short-term job training. And, you know, of course, the jobs of today are not going to be the jobs of 5 years from now, much less 10. I wonder if you could comment on your perception of the role of the liberal arts.
Liberal arts is still incredibly important. You have to remember that, you know, when we're talking about those soft skills are liberal arts. And so, yes, students need technical skills. They, you know, a lot of students want to go out to careers. Half of the students at my campus are transfer students. It's a very high transfer student population. So we make sure that we have our appropriate articulation agreements with schools. But the liberal arts are crucially important because they teach people how to think. They are the things that AI, artificial intelligence, is not going to eliminate those jobs. So you still need the critical thinking, right? You do. You need the communication. You need all those skills that we get through the liberal arts. So I value liberal arts. I also value the careers. I value them both. I mean, I have a degree in English literature, and it's gotten me to, you know, I've used my writing skills. I've used my communication skills. I've used all these different skills more than other skills that I've had. So you need those skills. But I think there is a bunch of people that are talking about, oh, you know, get them out, get them jobs, get them careers. But there's also another group that is saying that you have to have the liberal arts because they are the soft skills. They are really the success skills to keep people at jobs. You can get jobs with the technical skills. You keep jobs with the liberal arts skills. That's what I believe. Yes?
For our students who have graduated, especially in the technologies, what could we do to bring them back to help our enrollment? Because some of our students, when they graduate in technology, are very successful. What could we do with them?
So you're saying that you have technical students with technical
The
skills?
technologies, yeah.
Right. Why do you want to bring them back if they're successful in the industry?
I don't know. I'm asking you. Why shouldn't we bring them back?
What you can do is, if they need it, I don't want to bring back students unnecessarily.
Okay.
I want to bring back students if you're going to build their resumes, if you're going to get them a nice extra credential. For an example, data analytics is a brand new program. It's a program that works across all industries. And so that's a certificate. It's an associate's degree, but you can get little certificates that can tack on to your programs, and they can enhance your employability. So it's for enhancement.
In my classrooms, I'll bring a student back who's working in an industry, and the kids in class just perk right up and listen to, more than me, they listen to them.
They love that, yeah.
Yeah.
They love that because they like, my son is in a class, he's 16, he's a high school student. He's in a class with a 47-year-old, a 27-year-old, he loves it. You know, at first I thought, ooh, he's gonna be intimidated by this, all these different ages, but it's that diversity of people in your class that makes things exciting and fun because people have different ideas, they have different experiences from the faculty, and you hear all those different voices. So that would be a reason too, but you want to bring them back to enhance their employability. Any other questions? Oh, there we go. Here's another one.
What kind of ideas do you have for growing enrollment, particularly at this institution?
Enrollment is so important. We have done really, really well with, first thing is schedules. Look at how you're scheduling classes so that you're not eliminating and putting obstacles up for students. We do something called an app program. It's called an accelerated professional program. We do them on the weekends. They're 8 weeks, they're hybrid, and we've had a lot of success with that because these are people that are working. They come on the weekend, they're 8 weeks, they're hybrid, so it's a shortened class, and they get a credential that's gonna make them employable. So you wanna look at that. You wanna make sure you're not forgetting your part-time students. We've also had a lot of success with something called College in the High School. You probably do it here as well, where we're going into high schools and we're teaching them class. We're not teaching them, the high school students or the high school faculty are teaching those students. So you're creating pipelines of students coming. The other thing is you really need to use social media. I said that for your CARES model, you have to have your story and you need to talk about your story and build your story, and you need to make people excited and why they want to come here. Why do they want to get into the mechatronics program? Well, because it's an incredible program. You get all these different skills, cross-disciplinary skills. Every one of your graduates will have 10 potential jobs. So you need to share that story and build the story to get students in. And you need to have those culturally relevant programs too. So it's all the things I was talking about, the CARES model, that you need to try to share and talk about. Get in with industry. Make those industry connections. We have many, many industry connections. We have a program called Duquesne Light, where we have students, they start with us, they go to the industry site as their clinical site, they learn all the pole climbing skills, so we use the industry's sites for the lab work. So you make those connections with industry to get students. So it's not the standard way anymore. You're gonna need to find, we talked about these students. It's a diverse group of students. You need to find older students and younger students and any student you can get, online students too. So there's lots and lots of ideas to do that and improve enrollment. Everyone's been worried about enrollment. I have a strategic enrollment management group that I run every month with students and faculty and staff, and we come up with strategies. You have to keep your eye on the ball and keep moving towards progress. Okay? Yes? Sure.
Last one, I promise.
That's okay.
You said 40% of your students are non-traditional.
Well, no, that is the regular statistics.
Okay,
I
statistics.
would say that at my campus, I'd say that's probably about right, actually. Yeah.
Now, how do we find them?
How do we find them?
Yeah, and get them to come here.
You have to have programs that are going to help them. They're not going to come to you just because. You have to have these programs that are going to enhance their, either move them up in their job, or if they're laid off, get a short, fast program. You have to be connected with industry. Sometimes we go out to the hospitals. We go there. We teach the classes there, so it's easy for students. That's the other thing. You want to make it really, really easy for students to take classes. We've been successful with that too. So that's how we've been getting these, older students, by having the programs that are interesting, having the schedules that are appropriate for them so they can come when they're not at work, making it as relevant as possible, having really good faculty. Lots of good faculty too, that the students, they start learning about it and hearing about it, and they want to come. Yes?
Just last question also.
Sure.
In looking at SUNY ERIE, and your presentation was multifaceted.
Sure.
What would you think is the number one priority you focus on?
For SUNY ERIE? For me, it's been enrollment. So I don't know if it's going to be enrollment or retention. I can't make that decision I would have to talk to all the leaders here to find out. I've read about your website, I've talked to your teams here today, but that is a big question that I would have to figure out what it is. I don't want to say, yeah, do this, but usually it's, getting the students and keeping the students is usually the most important thing, usually. Yeah?
Isn't in your experience with retention, recruitment, enrollment,
Yes.
how the alignment of academics, student services, student affairs, enrollment management, what are some of your thoughts about best practice models that maybe you have experience with that you would think might be a good fit?
Well, I think that we need to really have, for enrollment management, you have to, I've said this already, but you have to have a really good, robust schedule. You have to have people wanting to come to your school because there's lots of flexibility and options. That seems like something maybe simple, but it's absolutely a part of retention and enrollment. If you're in a class and you've been going to that class Monday nights, and you have childcare organized, and then suddenly you switch it, we schedule it on a Tuesday, even though it's a cohort of classes, that's stressful and hard for students. So that's just a simple little thing, but the schedule has to be consistent, it has to be at a flexible time, so that's kind of like one option right there. We've done a lot of different things with enrollment management. We've looked at programs, we've looked to see if we have the appropriate programs, we put on different programs. We've looked at different segments of the population. We have a program called the Men of Merit, and we're focusing on African American men because they don't feel like they have enough mentoring. We also have a program for African American women. So we focus on like different segments that are struggling to stay in college. So we have to always do that. We also had Hispanic working groups that we've been working on we actually had a student leader, a Hispanic student that actually led these groups to find out what types of obstacles were happening for them. So you have to actually find out. Like you need to, it's not just like a model of this, that works, this works. You have to do a little bit of everything for enrollment to be managed and to work properly. Sure. Yes?
Hi, how do you see the role of online learning in the future of SUNY ERIE?
Online learning is really important. I mean, it's taken off for us so much so that we're creating a new campus, an online campus. It makes, for those working people, it makes it easier for them to get through their programs, but you have to really make sure there's academic rigor, that there's support systems in place for those students. You can't just say, good luck. So they have to sort of have an awareness of what they're in for. You have to have sort of what I believe is similar templates, so that when students are navigating from one course to another, it kind of looks a little bit the same. That's kind of a best practice from, I think it's called Quality Matters. It's a group that kind of oversees academic rigor and standards in online learning. So you have to, I see it as very, very important. I see that it's happening everywhere. But my thing would be not just to create classes online, but programs. Because students want to start with a class and they want to finish that way. It's really hard to just say, okay, you've been taking 2 semesters, now you have to come on site. Well, I can't come on site. I work full time, I don't work close by, there's all these different things. So online learning is really important to all schools for enrollment. Sure.
You were talking about engaging students, clubs, activities, yes, having them on campus. So many of our students are working 40 hours yes, a week. They go home, they have child care, or sometimes they have parent care responsibilities. How do you even get their attention, much less get them engaged actively on campus or in campus activities or something?
Well, what we're doing this semester, and I'm going to talk about the evening student probably, those are usually the ones, but we're doing pop-up services. So we've identified when the student has a break in their classes, and then one service will be offered like on Monday, the second on Tuesday, for just an hour. And they'll be in the hallways. So that when students are coming out from their breaks, they'll learn about supportive services, they'll learn about free tutoring, they'll learn about this, they'll learn about that, because they don't know usually. They just come in one door and then they go and they leave. If they don't need services, that's fine, but we want them to be aware of these services because they're often paying for them. So that's what we've done, just having a kind of a pop-up. It's quick, it's short, and we bring it right to them. That's what we've been doing.
We have time for one more question if there are any more.
At an institution, we've been working on our data and assessment. What was your feedback or experience you had with implementing assessment and data to make the program more successful?
We did an entire change of our assessment because of Middle States. Middle States was saying, you have not been capturing assessment and your faculty aren't part of assessment. So we totally changed it. We had 2 faculty that were involved in kind of spearheading it, which was very, very successful because the other faculty bought into those faculty. You had faculty leaders that really helped run it. They talked about moving from a 5-year program review to a 4-year program review. They changed the forms, the annual assessment forms, so they were easier to fill in, they were clear. We started with a new data platform to put the data into. That was much less cumbersome, so the faculty didn't mind sticking the data in because it was easier to do. Assessment is crucial, and that's why we're here, our students learning. You need to know if students are learning. So I've had a lot of experience with that. I was an academic dean, and I worked with a lot of faculty on program reviews, and annual assessment, indirect assessment, direct assessment, you know, pre-assessment, post-assessment. Assessment is something I'm very comfortable with because I did that as a dean to assist my faculty.
Well, Dr. Mullin-Sawicki, we'd like to thank you very much for coming, giving us your time, and doing this wonderful presentation.
Sure.
You've given us a lot to think about.
Okay, great.
And